How does a man walk out of his own family's laughter and end up taking everything they thought made them powerful? At my brother's promotion party, I was introduced as a joke with no degree, no future, and no value. They laughed, I smiled, and I already knew it would be the last time any of them ever spoke down to me. Before we go any further, take a second to subscribe, hit the hype button, and like the video. It really helps the channel grow, and tell us in the comments, what would you do in this situation? The restaurant was the kind of place where you paid extra just for the privilege of saying you'd been there. Crystal chandeliers hung from ceilings, painted to look like Italian frescoes, and the private hall my brother had rented could have seated 40 people comfortably. There were maybe 25 guests, all of them dressed like they'd just stepped out of a corporate catalog. Dark suits, careful smiles, the kind of handshakes that said, "I'm important," without using words. I arrived exactly on time, wearing the only blazer I owned. It was 5 years old and didn't fit quite right anymore, but it was clean. My shirt was pressed, my shoes were polished. I looked like someone who was trying, which was exactly the impression I wanted to give. The hostess led me through the main dining room, where normal people were eating normal meals, and into the private section where my family had gathered. The lighting was warmer here, softer. Someone had already started on the wine. My mother saw me first. She was standing near the bar, talking to a woman I didn't recognize. And when our eyes met, her smile flickered for just a second. Then it came back, wider than before, the way you smile at someone you're about to apologize for. "Wes," she said, walking over with her glass still in hand. "You made it." "I did." "Your brother will be so glad you came." I nodded. She didn't hug me. We weren't that kind of family anymore. My father was sitting at the head of the long table that ran down the center of the room. He saw me, raised his hand in a half wave, and went back to his conversation with a man in a navy suit. That was typical. Dad didn't start trouble, but he didn't stop it either. He just sat there and let the world happen around him. My brother was holding court near the windows. Tall, confident, laughing at something his manager had just said. He looked good. He always looked good. Perfect haircut, perfect tie, perfect posture. The kind of guy who could walk into any room and immediately become the center of it. I made my way over. "Wes!" He turned when he saw me, grinning like we were old friends. "Hey everyone, this is my little brother." The group turned to look at me. 5 or 6 people, all of them older, all of them successful looking. I recognized one of them from a family barbecue years ago. The rest were strangers. "Good to see you," I said. "You too, man, you too." He clapped me on the shoulder, hard enough that I had to brace myself. "Glad you could make it. I know you're busy." There was a pause. Someone chuckled. "Busy doing what?" one of the men asked. He was smiling, but it was the kind of smile that came with a question mark. My brother laughed. "That's a great question, Doug. Wes, what are you up to these days?" I could have said a lot of things. I could have mentioned the recycling startup I'd been building for the past 3 years. I could have talked about the regulatory research I'd been doing, the connections I'd been making, the prototype I'd been testing in a rented garage across town. I could have explained that I was 6 months away from signing a contract that would change everything. Instead, I said, "Still figuring it out." Doug nodded, like that confirmed something he'd already suspected. "Well, good luck with that." "Thanks." My brother squeezed my shoulder again. "Wes is taking his time. No rush, right? Not everyone needs to follow the traditional path." The words were supportive. The tone was not. Dinner was called a few minutes later. I found my seat near the middle of the table, between a woman I didn't know and an empty chair. My mother sat across from me, my father 2 seats down. My brother was at the far end, closest to the head, next to his manager. The food came in waves. Appetizers, salads, entrees that looked like art. I ate slowly, listening to the conversations around me. People talked about markets, mergers, promotions. They name-dropped companies and executives. They laughed at inside jokes I didn't understand. My mother leaned forward at one point and asked how I was doing. "Fine," I said. "Are you working?" "On something, yeah." "Something real?" I looked at her. She looked back. "I'm working on something," I said again. She nodded and took a sip of her wine. The speeches started after dessert. My brother's manager went first, talking about leadership, vision, the future of the company. He was good. Someone who could make quarterly earnings sound inspiring. Polite applause followed. Then my brother stood up. He thanked his manager, his team, his family, spoke about hard work, perseverance, staying focused, polished, rehearsed, perfect. People smiled, nodded, lifted their phones. Then he looked at me. "I also want to talk about choices," he said, "because that's what separates people who succeed from people who don't." The room quieted. My brother Wes is here tonight. He gestured toward me, heads turned. Wes is smart, really smart. But he chose a different path. No degree, no corporate job, no structure. And I respect that, truly. But choices have consequences. Someone cleared their throat. Wes has been figuring it out for a long time. And I love him, but he's a good example of what happens when you don't commit to something real. When you chase ideas instead of building a career, when you choose freedom over responsibility. My mother smiled. So did my father. Not wide smiles, just small ones. Agreement without ownership. So let's raise a glass, my brother said, lifting his wine. To hard work, to real success, and to the choices that get us there. Glasses rose. Mine too. And to Wes, he added, looking straight at me. Who's still trying? The room laughed. Not cruel, comfortable, familiar. My mother laughed. My father chuckled. Doug laughed the loudest. I stood up. It took a moment for the laughter to fade as people noticed. Thanks, I said. My brother grinned. Anytime. I looked around the table, at my mother still smiling, my father avoiding my eyes, the strangers who'd just agreed I was a punchline. I appreciate the advice, I said. And I'm glad everyone here knows exactly where they stand. I raised my glass. To clarity. I drank, set the glass down, nodded once, and walked out. The laughter stopped halfway through. I didn't go straight home. I drove for a while, windows down, radio off, following the highway until the city lights thinned and the suburbs blurred together. It was easier to think while moving. Being the family disappointment doesn't happen all at once. It's not a single moment when everyone decides you're not worth their time. It's 1,000 small moments stretched over years until the weight of them feels normal. It started when I was 16. My brother was 19 then, finishing his junior year at a state university with a business degree neatly mapped out. Corporate job, clear ladder, retirement plan before 30. My parents loved that certainty, the kind of future you could point at and call success. I didn't have that clarity. I liked building things, taking them apart, figuring out how systems worked. I spent most of high school in the garage, tinkering with old electronics, learning to code, reading about engineering and design. I was good at it. I just wasn't good at explaining why it mattered. When I told my parents I didn't want to go to college right away, they looked at me like I'd suggested joining a circus. Everyone goes to college, Wes, my mother said. We were in the living room, the same one where we'd had 100 versions of this conversation. That's just what you do. I know. I just don't think it's right for me yet. Why not? Because I don't know what I want to study, and I don't want to spend 4 years and $100,000 figuring it out. My father leaned forward. So what's your plan? I want to work, learn skills, maybe build something of my own. Build what? I don't know yet. That's the point. My mother shook her head. You can't just wander. You need structure. You need a degree. Why? Because that's how people succeed. Did you need a degree to raise a family? Her face tightened. That's different. How? My father stood up. Because this is about your future, and your future needs a foundation. College is that foundation. I didn't argue. I nodded and said I'd think about it. I never went. Instead, I took a job at a hardware store, learned about supply chains and inventory systems, and spent my nights studying business models. My brother graduated with honors and got hired by a consulting firm 3 weeks later. My parents threw him a party, 40 guests, a cake with his name on it. When I moved out a year later, my mother asked if I was sure I could afford it. I'll manage, I said. With what money? I've been saving. She didn't look convinced. Wes, if you need help, I don't. But if you do, I don't. I moved into a one-bedroom apartment on the east side of town. It was small, loud, and the heater didn't work half the time, but it was mine. I worked during the day, studied at night, and slowly started to build something that looked like a plan. The idea came to me on a Tuesday. I was walking past a recycling plant on my way to the hardware store when I noticed how much waste was piling up outside the fence. Bins overflowing, trucks coming and going, everything moving fast, but nothing moving efficiently. I stopped and watched for a while. It was chaos, expensive chaos. That night, I started researching municipal waste contracts, how they were awarded, who managed them, what the margins looked like. I found out that most cities outsourced recycling to private companies, and most of those companies were stuck using outdated systems that cost more than they should. I thought, what if someone built a better system? Not just better machines, better logistics, better tracking, better integration with city infrastructure. What if someone made recycling profitable instead of just necessary? I spent the next 6 months learning everything I could. I read regulatory documents, talked to people in the industry, studied case examples from other cities. I built a basic model, ran the numbers, and realized it could work. It would take time, and it would take money, but it could work. I didn't tell my family. I knew what they'd say. They'd say it was risky. They'd say I didn't have the experience. They'd say I should get a real job first, build some credibility, maybe go back to school. They'd say all the things they'd been saying for years. So I kept quiet and kept working. My brother got promoted twice in 3 years. The first time, my parents took him out to dinner. The second time, they bought him a watch. Both times, I got a phone call asking if I was still figuring things out. Yeah, I'd say. Still working on it. On what, exactly? A project. What kind of project? Recycling logistics. There'd be a pause. That sounds complicated. It is. Well, good luck with that. And that would be the end of it. The family group chat was worse. It started as a way to share updates, birthdays, holidays, weekend plans. But over time, it became a place where my brother posted about his wins and everyone congratulated him. New client, new office, new title. I'd get tagged every now and then. Wes, you should come to the next family dinner. It's been a while. Wes, any updates? Wes, are you still unemployed? That last one came from my mother. She deleted it 10 minutes later, but I'd already seen it. I stopped checking the chat after that. 3 years into the project, I hit a wall. I had the model, I had the research, I had a working prototype in a garage I was renting for $300 a month. But I didn't have the connections I needed to get in front of the people who mattered. Municipal contracts didn't go to guys working out of garages. They went to established companies with track records and references. I needed credibility. I found it in a man named Vincent Ortega. Vincent was a former consultant who'd spent 20 years working with city governments on infrastructure projects. He was retired now, but he still knew everyone worth knowing. I met him at a community meeting about waste management policy, and we got to talking afterward. You've done your homework, he said, flipping through my notes. I've tried. Why recycling? Because it's broken, and no one's fixing it. He smiled. You know how many people have told me that over the years? A lot? Hundreds. And you know how many of them actually did anything about it? Not many. None. He handed the notes back. But you might be different. Why? Because you're not trying to get rich, you're trying to prove something. He was right. Over the next year, Vincent introduced me to people. Small introductions at first. City planners, department heads, contract managers, people who could answer questions and point me in the right direction. Then bigger introductions. People who could actually make decisions. I learned how to talk to them. I learned what they cared about, what kept them up at night, what problems they needed solved. I learned that if you could save them money and make them look good, they'd listen. Slowly, the pieces started coming together. My brother got promoted again. This time, my parents threw him a party at that upscale restaurant. I got the invitation 3 weeks in advance. It came with a note from my mother. It would mean a lot to your brother if you came. I almost didn't go. But then I thought about the timing. I thought about where I was with the project, how close I was to finalizing everything. I thought about the fact that in 6 months, maybe less, I'd have something real to show them. And I thought, why not? Why not let them have one more night of thinking they know who I am? So I went, and they laughed. I got home a little after 11. The apartment was dark, quiet, exactly the way I'd left it. I didn't turn on the lights. I just walked to the kitchen, filled a glass with water, and sat down at the table. The toast kept playing in my head. To Wes, who's still trying. The laughter, my mother's smile. I sat there for a long time, not moving, just listening to the hum of the refrigerator and the faint sound of traffic outside. People talk about revenge like it's this hot, angry thing. Like you wake up one day burning with rage and decide to destroy someone. But that's not how it works. Not for me, anyway. Revenge is cold, it's patient. It's the decision you make when you realize that anger won't change anything, but action might. I wasn't angry at my brother. I wasn't even angry at my parents. I was just done. Done being the punchline, done being the cautionary tale, done being the guy people looked at and thought, well, at least I'm not him. I finished the water, set the glass down, and walked over to the corner of the kitchen where I kept my files. 3 years of research, notes, diagrams, calculations, everything I needed to turn the recycling project from an idea into a real company. I spread it all out on the table and started going through it again. The model was solid. I knew that. I'd tested it a dozen different ways, run the numbers until I could recite them in my sleep. The system I'd designed would cut processing costs by 30%, reduce contamination rates by half, and integrate directly with existing city infrastructure. It wasn't just better than what was out there. It was better by a mile. The prototype was working. I'd spent the last 8 months in that garage, building and rebuilding, testing and refining. It wasn't pretty, but it worked. And I had video documentation to prove it. The regulatory pathways were mapped. I'd spent months studying municipal codes, environmental regulations, contract requirements. I knew exactly what I needed to qualify for city partnerships, and I'd already started working through the checklist. What I didn't have yet was the final signature. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found Vincent's number. It was late, but he'd told me to call any time. He picked up on the third ring. "Wes, you okay?" "Yeah, sorry to call so late." "Don't worry about it. What's going on?" I hesitated. "I need to ask you something." "Shoot." "If I wanted to move faster on this, if I wanted to lock everything down in the next few months instead of waiting until next year, could we do it?" There was a pause. "You mean finalize the contracts?" "Yeah. That's ambitious. We're still working through the approval process. There are stages, Wes. You can't just skip them." "I'm not asking to skip them. I'm asking if we can accelerate them." Another pause. "Why the rush?" I looked at the papers spread across the table. "Because I'm ready, and I don't want to wait anymore." Vincent was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "There's a sustainability briefing in 4 months. City council, department heads, private sector partners. If we could get you on the agenda, that would speed things up considerably." "What would that take?" "A formal proposal, documentation, proof of concept, and a hell of a pitch." "I can do that." "I know you can. But Wes, listen. This kind of thing, it's high profile. If you're going to do it, you need to be ready. Not just with the project, but with everything. You understand?" "I understand." "Okay, I'll make some calls, see what I can set up." "Thanks, Vincent." "Don't thank me yet. Just get your materials ready. And Wes?" "Yeah?" "Whatever happened tonight, don't let it cloud your judgment. You're doing this because it's the right move, not because you're trying to prove something to someone." "I know. Do you?" I looked at the calendar hanging on the wall across from me. There was a date circled in red 4 months from now, the sustainability briefing. "Yeah," I said. "I do." We hung up. I sat there for a few more minutes, staring at the files, at the calendar, at the apartment that had been home for the past 3 years. Then I started working. I didn't sleep that night. I went through every document, every calculation, every piece of data I'd collected. I rewrote sections of the proposal, tightened the language, made sure every claim was backed up by evidence. I reorganized the presentation so it told a story instead of just listing facts. By the time the sun came up, I had a plan. The next 4 months were going to be brutal. I'd have to finalize the prototype, complete the regulatory paperwork, prepare the pitch, and coordinate with Vincent to make sure I was ready for the briefing. There wouldn't be time for distractions. There wouldn't be time for doubt. But I'd been preparing for this for 3 years. I was ready. I made coffee, sat back down at the table, and got to work. The library became my second home. I'd always preferred working there over working at home. The silence helped me focus, and the study rooms in the back were free as long as you reserved them in advance. I started booking one every afternoon, showing up with my laptop and a stack of notes and staying until they kicked me out at closing time. The regulatory documentation was the hardest part. Municipal waste management contracts came with layers of requirements: environmental compliance, safety standards, operational transparency, financial stability. Every city had its own version, and even though the basics were similar, the details mattered. I spent 2 weeks just mapping out the approval process: who reviewed what, when, and in what order. I made flowcharts, timelines, checklists. I color-coded everything so I could see at a glance where I was and what still needed to be done. It was tedious, exhausting work, but it was also the work that separated people who talked about changing things from people who actually did it. Vincent helped. He'd been through this process dozens of times, and he knew where the landmines were. He told me which departments moved fast and which ones dragged their feet. He told me which officials cared about innovation and which ones just wanted to check boxes. "The key," he said one afternoon over coffee, "is to make their job easier. They don't want to take risks. They don't want to explain to the city council why they partnered with some guy working out of a garage. So you need to give them cover." "How?" "Documentation, endorsements, proof that you're not just another dreamer with a PowerPoint." "I have proof." "I know you do, but they need to see it in a format they recognize. Reports, certifications, third-party validations. The more official it looks, the easier it is for them to say yes. I nodded. What about the briefing? That's your moment. If you can walk into that room and show them something they haven't seen before, something that solves a real problem they're already dealing with, they'll listen. But you only get one shot, so make it count. I met with city officials 3 times over the next month. Not formal meetings, just informal conversations. I'd reach out, introduce myself, explain what I was working on, and ask if they had 15 minutes to talk. Most of them said yes. They were curious, if nothing else. I learned a lot from those conversations. I learned that the current recycling system was hemorrhaging money. I learned that contamination rates were higher than anyone wanted to admit. I learned that the city council was under pressure to meet new environmental targets, and they didn't have a clear plan for how to get there. I also learned that no one thought the problem could be solved by a startup. We've looked into this before, one of the department heads told me. Private companies come in, promise the moon, and then underdeliver. It's easier to just stick with what we have. Even if what you have isn't working? He shrugged. At least we know what we're dealing with. I didn't push. I just thanked him for his time and moved on. Meanwhile, my brother was thriving. He posted about it constantly. New projects, new responsibilities, new accolades. The family group chat lit up every time he shared something. My mother would comment with 3 or 4 exclamation points. My father would add a thumbs up emoji. I didn't comment. I didn't even read most of it, but I saw enough to know that his world was expanding while mine stayed small and invisible. That was fine. I didn't need visibility yet. I needed progress. The prototype got better. I upgraded the sorting mechanism, improved the tracking software, and ran a full-scale test that processed 3 tons of material in under 2 hours. It wasn't perfect, but it was close. Close enough to show people. I documented everything. I took videos, recorded data, compiled reports. I built a presentation that walked through the problem, the solution, and the projected impact. I rehearsed it until I could deliver it in my sleep. Vincent reviewed it and made a few tweaks. Good, he said, but don't make it too technical. These people aren't engineers. They're administrators. They want to know what it does, not how it works. Got it. And Wes? Yeah? Stay confident. You've earned this. I appreciated that. I didn't always feel like I'd earned it, but I appreciated hearing it. 2 months before the briefing, I got an email from the city's sustainability office. They were hosting a networking mixer for private sector partners working on environmental initiatives. It was technically invitation only, but Vincent pulled some strings and got me on the list. I almost didn't go. Networking events weren't my thing. I didn't like small talk, and I didn't like rooms full of people pretending to care about each other's projects while secretly calculating how those projects affected their own. But Vincent insisted. You need to be visible, he said. Not loud, just present. Let people see your face. Let them connect the name to a person. So I went. The event was held at a hotel downtown. Big ballroom, open bar, tables covered in brochures and business cards. There were maybe 100 people there, all of them dressed better than me, all of them comfortable in a way I wasn't. I grabbed a drink and found a spot near the back where I could watch without being watched. It didn't take long to spot my brother. He was standing near the center of the room, laughing with a group of executives. He looked like he belonged there. Hell, he probably did. This was his world. Polished, professional, full of people who knew how to play the game. I thought about leaving. But then I saw someone I recognized. Doug, the guy from the party. The one who'd laughed the loudest. He was talking to a woman in a gray suit, gesturing with his hands, smiling like he'd just said something clever. I watched him for a minute, then turned and walked the other way. I spent the next hour moving through the room, introducing myself to people, explaining what I was working on. Most of them were polite but uninterested. A few asked follow-up questions. One guy gave me his card and told me to send him more information. It wasn't much, but it was something. I was heading for the exit when someone called my name. Wes? I turned. It was my brother. Hey, he said, walking over. I didn't know you were going to be here. Last-minute thing. He nodded, glancing around. What brings you to an event like this? Networking. For what? A project I'm working on. Right? The recycling thing. Yeah, he smiled. How's that going? It's going. Good, that's good. He took a sip of his drink. You know, Wes, I've been thinking about what I said at the party, and I just want you to know, I didn't mean it as an attack. I was just trying to be honest. I know. I mean, we all want you to succeed. We just worry sometimes, you know? Mom and Dad especially. They don't always understand what you're doing. I know. He looked at me for a moment, like he was waiting for me to say something else. When I didn't, he patted me on the shoulder. Well, keep at it. I'm sure it'll work out. Thanks. He walked away. I left a few minutes later. On my way home, I got a text from Vincent. Briefing confirmed. 4 weeks. You ready? I texted back. Yeah, I'm ready. The final month was a blur. I spent every waking hour locked in on the briefing. Vincent scheduled 3 practice runs, sitting in on each one and picking apart my delivery with surgical precision. He made me slow down when I talked too fast, sharpen my language when it got too vague, and cut entire slides when they didn't serve the narrative. You're not teaching a class, he said after the second run. You're making a case. Every word, every image, every number has to move them closer to saying yes. If it doesn't belong. I rebuilt the presentation 4 times. By the end, it was lean, sharp, and impossible to ignore. 12 slides, 6 minutes of speaking, 3 minutes for questions. The story was simple. The city had a problem, I had a solution, and partnering with me would save them money while making them look good. It was the truth. And the truth, when you packaged it right, was a hell of a weapon. I finalized the paperwork during the 3rd week. Business registration, environmental compliance certifications, insurance documentation, financial projections. Everything had to be clean, professional, and ready to hand over the moment someone asked for it. Vincent helped me navigate the sections I didn't understand. He knew which forms mattered and which ones were just bureaucratic theater. He also knew people, clerks, administrators, mid-level officials, who could move things along faster if you asked nicely and didn't waste their time. Never underestimate the power of being pleasant, he said. Half of getting what you want is just not being an inconvenience. The company name was the last piece. I'd been calling it the Recycling Project for 3 years, but that wasn't going to work anymore. I needed something official, something that sounded established even if it wasn't. I went through 100 options. Most of them were terrible, too generic, too clever, too focused on buzzwords that meant nothing. Then I landed on it. Cascade Resource Systems. Simple, professional, scalable. I filed the trademark application, updated all the documents, and had new business cards printed. They arrived 2 days before the briefing. I held one in my hand and stared at it for a long time. Wes Farrow, founder, Cascade Resource Systems. It felt strange to see my name next to a title like that. For 3 years, I'd been nobody. The guy with no degree, no job, no future. And now I was the founder of a company that didn't exist yet, but was about to. My brother announced his expansion on social media the same week. He posted a photo of himself in a glass-walled conference room, surrounded by executives, everyone smiling for the camera. The caption was something about growth, leadership, and the importance of building strong teams. The post got 200 likes in an hour. My mother shared it. My father commented. Doug left a string of clapping emojis. I saw it, scrolled past it, and went back to work. 3 days before the briefing, I got an email from the city's sustainability office. It was short, professional, and included an agenda for the event. My name was on it. Session 4, Private Sector Innovation in Waste Management. Presenter, Wes Farrow, Cascade Resource Systems. I read it 3 times. Then I printed it out and pinned it to the wall above my desk. The night before the briefing, I couldn't sleep. I went over the presentation one more time, then again, then again. I practiced my delivery in the mirror, timed myself, adjusted my pacing. I laid out my clothes, checked my notes, charged my laptop twice. At some point, I made coffee and sat down at the kitchen table. The apartment was quiet. The kind of quiet that makes you think too much. I thought about the party, the toast, the laughter. I thought about my mother asking if I was working on something real. I thought about my brother standing in front of 25 people, turning me into a punchline. And I thought about tomorrow. Tomorrow, I would step into a room filled with people who mattered, people who made decisions, people who controlled budgets, signed contracts, and decided which ideas moved forward and which ones were quietly discarded. Tomorrow, they'd see me, not as the guy who didn't finish college, not as the unemployed brother, not as the cautionary tale. They'd see me as the person who solved a problem they couldn't. I finished the coffee, shut down my laptop, and finally went to bed. I didn't sleep much, but I didn't need to. The briefing was at 10 in the morning. I arrived at 9:30, dressed in the same blazer I'd worn to the party, carrying a slim leather portfolio Vincent had lent me. The event was being held in a conference center downtown, a modern building with too much glass and not enough character. I checked in at the front desk, got my badge, and followed the signs to the main hall. It was bigger than I expected, rows of seats facing a stage with a podium and a projection screen. There were maybe 70 people already seated, city officials, department heads, private sector reps. Some of them I recognized from my research. Most I didn't. Vincent was waiting near the back. He saw me, nodded, and gestured for me to follow him into a side hallway. "You good?" he asked. "Yeah. You look good. Calm." "I'm calm." He smiled. "Liar. But that's okay. Use the nerves. They'll keep you sharp." "Who's in the room?" "Everyone who matters. City council members, sustainability directors, waste management heads, a few private sector partners, press too." "Press?" "Local reporters. This is a public initiative, Wes. They want coverage." I nodded. That was fine. Better even. "Your slot is fourth," Vincent said. "You'll have 10 minutes total. 6 for the pitch, 3 for questions, 1 for wrap-up. Don't go over." "I won't." "And Wes?" I looked at him. "You've earned this. Don't forget that." I didn't respond. I just nodded and walked back into the hall. The first 3 presentations were exactly what I expected. Competent, professional, boring. Each one followed the same formula. Identify a problem, propose a solution, show some charts, ask for partnership. The audience clapped politely after each one. Then it was my turn. I walked up to the podium, connected my laptop, and waited for the screen to load. The room was quiet. I looked out at the faces staring back at me. Some curious, some skeptical, some already bored, and then I started talking. "Good morning, my name is Wes Farrow, and I'm the founder of Cascade Resource Systems." I let that sit for a second. Not long, just enough for people to register the name. 3 years ago, I noticed something. Our city's recycling system was broken. Not inefficient, broken. We were spending millions of dollars every year to process waste that half the time ended up in landfills anyway. Contamination rates were through the roof, processing costs were climbing, and despite all the money we were pouring into the system, we weren't hitting any of our environmental targets. I clicked to the next slide. A simple chart showing contamination rates over the past 5 years. The line went up, up, up. This is what failure looks like. And the reason it's failing isn't because people don't care. It's because the system we're using wasn't built for the kind of waste we're producing now. It's outdated, inefficient, and expensive. I paused. Let them sit with that. But here's the good news. It doesn't have to be this way. Next slide. A diagram of the Cascade system. Clean, simple, easy to understand. Cascade Resource Systems is a waste processing platform designed specifically for modern municipal recycling. It uses advanced sorting technology to reduce contamination by 52%. It integrates directly with existing city infrastructure, which means no expensive overhauls. And it cuts processing costs by 30% in the first year alone. I could see people leaning forward now. Not everyone, but enough. I'm not here to sell you a dream. I'm here to show you something that works. I clicked to the next slide. Video footage from the garage. 3 tons of mixed recyclables being processed in under 2 hours. The system sorting, cleaning, compacting, numbers appearing on screen showing contamination rates, processing speed, cost per ton. The room was silent. This is a working prototype. It's been tested, it's been refined, and it's ready to scale. I clicked again. Financial projections, savings estimates, environmental impact. All of it backed by data, all of it conservative. If we partner, the city saves money, meets its environmental targets, and becomes a model for other municipalities. And Cascade gets the opportunity to prove that this technology works at scale. I looked out at the room, at the city council members, at the department heads, at the people who could say yes. I'm not asking for a handout. I'm offering a solution to a problem you already have. The question is whether you're ready to take it. I clicked to the final slide. My contact information, the Cascade logo, nothing else. Thank you. I stepped back from the podium. For a moment, nobody moved. Then someone started clapping, then someone else, then the whole room. It wasn't loud, it wasn't a standing ovation, but it was real. I walked back to my seat, and Vincent caught my eye. He nodded once. The questions came fast. How soon could this be operational? 6 months, assuming regulatory approval stays on track. What's the upfront investment required from the city? Minimal. We're proposing a partnership model where Cascade handles infrastructure costs in exchange for long-term processing contracts. What happens if contamination rates don't drop as much as you're projecting? Then we eat the loss. Our fees are tied to performance. If we don't deliver, we don't get paid. That got their attention. Who else is using this system? Right now, no one. You'd be the first. A pause. Then, why should we take that risk? I looked at the woman who'd asked the question. Mid-50s, sharp eyes, city council member. Because the risk of doing nothing is higher, I said. Your current system is losing money. It's failing to meet environmental standards. And it's only going to get worse. Cascade gives you a way out. And if it works here, you'll be the city that figured it out first. She nodded slowly. The session ended 10 minutes later. People lingered, talking in small groups. A few came up to me, asked for business cards, said they'd like to schedule follow-up meetings. I smiled, handed out cards, and tried not to look as shaky as I felt. Vincent pulled me aside as the room started to clear out. "You crushed it," he said. "We'll see." "No, Wes, you crushed it. I've been to 100 of these, and I've never seen a presentation land like that." I wanted to believe him, but I'd learned a long time ago not to count on anything until it was signed. "What happens now?" I asked. "Now we wait. They'll review the proposal, run it past their legal teams, probably schedule a few more meetings. But Wes, listen, you're in. They're going to say yes. It's just a matter of time." I nodded. "Okay. Go home. Get some rest. You've earned it." I didn't go home. I went to a coffee shop 3 blocks away, ordered something I didn't drink, and sat by the window for 2 hours, staring at nothing. My phone buzzed. It was my mother. "Your brother's event is tonight. Are you coming?" I'd forgotten, or maybe I'd just blocked it out. My brother was hosting a public announcement about his company's expansion into sustainable business practices. It was being held at a corporate office downtown, complete with press coverage and a reception afterward. I hadn't planned on going, but then I thought about it. About the timing. About the fact that I'd just walked out of a room full of people who were about to make me part of the same conversation my brother thought he owned. I texted back, "Yeah, I'll be there." She sent a thumbs-up emoji. I finished my coffee and headed home to change. The event started at 6. I showed up at 6:15. It was being held in a sleek corporate building with a lobby full of glass and steel. There were signs directing people to the 3rd floor, where a conference room had been set up with rows of chairs facing a small stage. I walked in, found a seat near the back, and waited. My brother was already on stage, talking to a reporter. He looked good, confident, in control. The room filled up over the next 15 minutes. Executives, partners, clients. My parents arrived and sat near the front. My mother waved when she saw me. I waved back. At 6:30, the presentation started. My brother took the podium and launched into his pitch. He talked about sustainability, corporate responsibility, and the importance of aligning business practices with environmental goals. He introduced a new initiative his company was rolling out, some kind of green partnership program designed to help clients reduce their carbon footprint. It was polished, rehearsed, professional, and it was completely dependent on partnerships with companies like mine. I knew that because I'd seen the same pitch a dozen times from other corporations. They didn't build the solutions. They partnered with people who did. They put their name on it, took credit for the results, and acted like they'd invented the whole thing. My brother wrapped up his speech and opened the floor for questions. Someone asked about implementation timelines. Someone else asked about cost structures. Someone asked whether the company had already identified partners for the initiative. My brother smiled. "We're in talks with several potential partners. We'll be making announcements over the next few months as those relationships are finalized." A reporter in the second row raised her hand. "Can you give us any details about those partners?" "Not yet, but I can tell you we're looking for innovative companies with proven track records in sustainability, companies that share our values and our commitment to real impact." I almost laughed. The Q&A ended. The crowd clapped. My brother stepped off the stage and immediately got swarmed by people wanting to talk to him. I stayed in my seat, watching. My mother came over a few minutes later. "I'm glad you made it," she said. "Yeah. Wasn't that wonderful? Your brother's doing such important work." She looked at me for a moment, then smiled. "You should go say hi. I'm sure he'd love to see you." "I will." She walked away. I stayed where I was. I didn't need to talk to my brother. I didn't need to congratulate him or shake his hand or pretend I was proud. I just needed him to know I'd been there. So I stood up, walked to the edge of the crowd, and waited until he looked my way. When he did, I nodded once. He nodded back. Then I left. 2 weeks later, I got the call. I was in the garage running a stress test on the sorting mechanism when my phone rang. Vincent's name lit up the screen. "Wes, it's done." I set down the wrench I'd been holding. "What's done?" "The contract. They approved it. You're in." I didn't say anything for a few seconds. I just stood there, phone pressed to my ear, trying to process what he'd just said. "Wes, you there?" "Yeah, I'm here." "Did you hear me? You're in. The city council voted this morning. Cascade Resource Systems is officially a municipal partner." I sat down on the edge of the workbench. "What's the timeline?" They want to start the pilot program in 3 months, full rollout by the end of the year. They're announcing it publicly next week. Publicly? Press conference, City Hall. You'll need to be there. I looked around the garage, at the prototype, the tools, the boxes of spare parts stacked against the wall. 3 years of work, all of it leading to this. Okay, I said. I'll be there. Vincent laughed. That's it? Just okay? What do you want me to say? I don't know, Wes. Maybe act a little excited. You just landed a contract most people spend a decade trying to get. I'm excited. You sound thrilled, I smiled. I'll work on it. We talked for a few more minutes, going over details, deliverables, timelines, next steps. When we hung up, I sat there for a while, staring at the phone. Then I called my brother. He picked up on the second ring. Wes. Hey, what's up? Just wanted to let you know I'll be at City Hall next week. There's a press conference. Oh yeah? What for? The city's announcing a new recycling partnership. I thought you might want to know. There was a pause. Wait, is this for your project? Yeah. Another pause, longer this time. That's great, man. Really. I didn't know you were that far along. I wasn't. Now I am. Well, congratulations. That's a big deal. Thanks. He cleared his throat. So, what does this mean exactly? You're working with the city now? Partnering, yeah. Cascade Resource Systems is handling municipal waste processing. Cascade Resource Systems. That's the name of your company? Yeah. Huh. I didn't know you'd formalized it. I did. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, Wes, this is really impressive. I mean it. I'm happy for you. Appreciate it. Listen, we should grab lunch sometime. Catch up. I'd love to hear more about what you're doing. Sure. I'll let you know when things settle down. Sounds good. And Wes? Yeah? Seriously. Congratulations. I hung up. The press conference was scheduled for the following Thursday. Vincent sent me a briefing document 2 days before, outlining who would be there, what would be said, and what I needed to prepare. It was being held in the main press room at City Hall. The mayor would speak first, followed by the sustainability director, followed by me. 30 minutes total, with time for questions at the end. I rewrote my remarks 3 times. The first version was too technical, the second was too defensive, the third was just right. Simple, clear, focused on the partnership rather than the product. I practiced it twice the night before. Then I went to bed early, woke up at 6, and spent the morning going over my notes one last time. At noon, I put on my suit, grabbed the folder Vincent had prepared, and drove downtown. City Hall was a massive stone building with columns and steps and an American flag out front. I'd driven past it 100 times, but never been inside. The press room was on the second floor. I checked in with the mayor's assistant, got my badge, and followed her down a hallway lined with portraits of former officials. The room was already half full, reporters, cameras, city staff. I recognized a few faces from the briefing. Vincent was standing near the front, talking to the sustainability director. He saw me and waved me over. You ready? He asked. Yeah. Good. Just stick to the script. The mayor's going to introduce you, you'll say your piece, and then we'll take questions. Easy. Got it. The mayor arrived 10 minutes later. Mid-60s, gray hair, the kind of presence that made you sit up straighter without realizing it. She shook hands with a few people, smiled for a photo, and then took her place at the podium. The room quieted down. Good afternoon, she said. Thank you all for being here. Today we're announcing a partnership that represents a significant step forward in our city's commitment to environmental sustainability. She talked for 5 minutes, outlining the city's goals, the challenges they'd faced, and the decision to work with a private sector partner to modernize the recycling system. And now, she said, I'd like to introduce the founder of Cascade Resource Systems, Wes Farrow. I stood up, walked to the podium, and looked out at the room. Cameras flashed. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you to the City Council for trusting Cascade with this opportunity. I kept it short. 3 minutes, just like we'd planned. I talked about the technology, the timeline, and the projected impact. I didn't oversell it. I didn't need to. When I finished, the mayor opened the floor for questions. How soon will residents see changes? The pilot program starts in 3 months. Full implementation by the end of the year. What makes this system different from what's currently in place? It's built for modern waste streams, lower contamination, higher efficiency, better integration with city infrastructure. What happens if it doesn't work? I looked at the reporter who'd asked. It will. A few people laughed. The reporter smiled. The questions went on for another 10 minutes. Then the mayor thanked everyone for coming, and the room started to clear out. Vincent grabbed me on my way out. "You nailed it," he said. "It went okay." "It went better than okay. You sounded like you'd been doing this for years." "I've been practicing." He grinned. "I can tell." We walked out of the building together. The sun was bright, the air was cool, and for the first time in 3 years, I felt like I could breathe. My phone buzzed, a text from my mother. "Saw the announcement online. Very impressive. We're proud of you." I read it twice, then put the phone back in my pocket. The next 3 months moved fast. Cascade went from a concept to a real company almost overnight. I hired a small team, engineers, logistics coordinators, a part-time accountant. We moved out of the garage and into a proper facility on the industrial side of town. It wasn't glamorous, but it was functional. The pilot program launched on schedule. We started with 3 neighborhoods, processing their recyclables through the Cascade system and tracking the results. Contamination rates dropped, processing costs dropped. The city was happy. Local media picked up the story, a few articles, a segment on the evening news. Nothing major, but enough to get people talking. My brother reached out twice during that time. Once to congratulate me again, once to ask if I'd be interested in exploring a partnership between Cascade and his company. I told him I'd think about it. I didn't think about it. By the end of the 3rd month, the city approved full-scale implementation. Cascade would handle all municipal recycling for the next 5 years, with an option to extend. The announcement was made at a city council meeting. I wasn't there. Vincent represented me, and he called afterward to tell me it was official. "You did it," he said. "Everything you said you'd do, you did it. We're not done yet. No, but you're past the hard part." I wasn't sure that was true, but I appreciated him saying it. Word got around fast. Within a week, I started getting calls from other cities. Small ones at first, towns with populations under 50,000 looking for ways to modernize their systems without breaking their budgets. Then bigger ones. A city in the next state over, another on the coast. I hired someone to handle outreach, then I hired someone to manage contracts, then I hired 3 more engineers. Cascade was growing faster than I'd planned. My family noticed. The group chat, which I'd been ignoring for months, suddenly came alive again. My mother asked how things were going. My father sent a link to an article about the pilot program. My brother posted a comment about how proud he was to see me succeeding. I responded politely, briefly, and then I went back to work. 4 months after the press conference, my brother called me. "Wes, hey, you got a minute?" "Sure, what's up?" "I wanted to run something by you. We're hosting a corporate sustainability summit in a few weeks, and I think it'd be great if you could speak. Share your story, talk about Cascade, that kind of thing." "Who's we?" "My company. We're bringing together leaders in sustainability to talk about innovation, collaboration, best practices. It's a big event, national coverage." "And you want me to speak?" "I think you'd be perfect. People want to hear from someone who's actually doing the work, you know? Not just talking about it." I leaned back in my chair. "What's the angle?" "What do you mean?" "Why do you want me there? What's in it for you?" He hesitated. "Wes, it's not like that. I just think it's a good opportunity. For both of us." "How so?" "Well, we're building a network of sustainability partners. Companies like Cascade. If you speak at the summit, it positions you as a thought leader in the space, and it helps us show that we're serious about working with innovators. So it's good PR. It's good for everyone." I thought about it. "I'll pass." "What? Why?" "Because I don't need to be positioned as anything. Cascade speaks for itself." "Wes, come on. This is a huge platform. You'd be crazy to turn it down." "Then I'm crazy." There was a long pause. "Is this about the party?" "What party?" "The promotion party. The toast. Look, if I said something that upset you, you didn't upset me, then what's the problem?" "There's no problem. I just don't want to speak at your event." He sighed. "Fine. Whatever. I was just trying to help." "I appreciate it." We hung up. Vincent called me an hour later. "Did your brother just try to get you to speak at his summit?" "How did you know?" "Because 3 other people called me asking if you were going to be there. It's all anyone's talking about." "I'm not going." "I know. I told them that." "Good." Vincent laughed. "Wes, you know what this means, right?" "What?" "They need you now, not the other way around." I didn't respond. I just sat there staring out the window of my office. "You okay?" Vincent asked. "Yeah, I'm good." "You sure? You sound off." "I'm fine. Just thinking." "About what?" I watched a truck pull into the facility, loaded with recyclables from the morning route. "About how things change." They do, and you're the one changing them. We talked for a few more minutes, then hung up. I sat there for a while longer, thinking about the party, about the toast, about the way my mother had laughed and my father had looked away. They'd called me a joke, and now they wanted to stand next to me. The summit happened without me. I saw the photos online. My brother on stage, shaking hands with executives, smiling for the cameras. The event got decent coverage, a few articles, some social media buzz. No one mentioned that I wasn't there. A week later, my brother announced a new partnership. His company was teaming up with a waste management firm to launch a green initiative in 3 major cities. The press release mentioned Cascade by name. I read it twice, then forwarded it to my lawyer. "Is this a problem?" I asked. She called me back 10 minutes later. "Not yet, but it could be. They're implying a relationship that doesn't exist." "Can they do that?" "Technically, yes. But if they start using your name to sell their services, we can push back." "What do you recommend?" "Wait and see. If it becomes a pattern, we'll send a letter." I thanked her and hung up. Then I called my brother. "Wes!" "Hey, what's up?" "I saw the press release." "Oh yeah? What did you think?" "Why is Cascade mentioned?" "Because you're doing great work, man. We wanted to highlight companies that are leading the way. We're not partners." "I know, but we could be. That's kind of the point." "I don't want to be partners." There was a pause. "Why not?" "Because I don't need to be." "Wes, this is a huge opportunity. If we work together, we could scale Cascade faster than you ever could on your own. We have resources, connections, infrastructure. I'm good." "Are you seriously turning this down?" "Yeah." "Why?" I thought about how to answer that. Then I decided not to. "I've got to go," I said. "Good luck with the initiative." I hung up before he could respond. 6 weeks later, my brother's green initiative collapsed. It started with an article in a trade publication. Someone had looked into the waste management firm he'd partnered with and found out they'd been cited for environmental violations in 2 states. Nothing catastrophic, but bad enough to raise questions. Then a local news station picked it up. They ran a segment questioning whether my brother's company had done their due diligence before announcing the partnership. Then the firm pulled out. The whole thing unraveled in less than a week. My brother issued a statement saying they were re-evaluating their approach and committed to finding the right partners. It was corporate speak for, "We messed up. I didn't reach out. I didn't need to. But my mother did." She called on a Tuesday afternoon. I was in a meeting, so I let it go to voicemail. She called again an hour later, then again that evening. I finally picked up. "Wes, we need to talk." "About what?" "About your brother." I didn't say anything. "He's going through a hard time right now. This partnership falling apart, the press coverage, it's been really difficult for him." "I'm sorry to hear that." "Are you?" I paused. "What do you mean?" "Yeah, I mean, you've been distant, Wes, ever since the party. And I know your brother said some things that night that maybe weren't ideal. But he didn't mean anything by it. He was just trying to be honest. He was trying to be funny. He was trying to motivate you." "By turning me into a joke?" She sighed. "Wes, that's not fair. We've always supported you. We've always wanted the best for you." "Have you?" "Of course we have. We're your family." I looked out the window. It was getting dark. "Mom, I appreciate the call, but I've got to go." "Wes, I'll talk to you later." I hung up. The next day, my brother called. "Wes, I need your help." I didn't respond right away. I just waited. "The partnership fell through. I'm sure you heard." "I did?" "It's a mess. The press is tearing us apart. Our clients are asking questions, and I need to show them that we're still serious about sustainability." "Okay. I want to announce a partnership with Cascade." I almost laughed. "No." "Wes, please, just hear me out." "There's nothing to hear out. We're not partnering." "Why not? It makes sense. You're doing great work. We have the infrastructure to help you scale. It's a win-win." "For you, maybe?" "For both of us." "Wes, come on. This is business. Put aside whatever personal issues you have and think about what's best for Cascade." "I am thinking about what's best for Cascade, and partnering with you isn't it." He was quiet for a moment. Then his tone changed. "You know what, Wes? I've tried to be supportive. I've tried to be encouraging. But you've been acting like I'm the enemy ever since that party." "I don't think you're the enemy." "Then what's the problem?" "The problem is that you spent years treating me like I didn't matter. And now that I do, you want to pretend we're equals." "We are equals." "No, we're not." He laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. Wow. Okay. So this is about ego. It's not about ego. It's about respect. I've always respected you, Wes. No, you haven't. You've tolerated me. There's a difference. The line went quiet. I don't know what you want me to say, he finally said. You don't have to say anything. Just leave Cascade out of your press releases. Fine. Whatever. Good luck doing this on your own. Thanks. I will. He hung up. I sat there for a while, staring at my phone. Then I got back to work. The next 2 months were some of the busiest of my life. Cascade expanded into 2 more cities. We finalized contracts, hired more staff, opened a second facility. The company was profitable now, not just sustainable. I barely had time to think about my family, but they kept showing up. My mother sent emails, my father called once asking if we could have dinner. My brother stopped reaching out entirely. I responded politely, vaguely, and kept my distance. Then I got an invitation. It came in the mail, printed on heavy cardstock. My brother's company was hosting a sustainability gala. Black tie, corporate sponsors, media coverage, the works, and Cascade was listed as one of the featured partners. I called my lawyer. Did we agree to this? I asked. No, I'll send them a letter. Don't. Why not? I looked at the invitation again. Because I'm going to handle it myself. She paused. Wes, what are you planning? Nothing dramatic. I'm just going to show up. And then what? And then I'm going to make sure everyone in that room knows exactly who owns Cascade. The gala was scheduled for 3 weeks out. I marked it on my calendar, confirmed my attendance, and went back to work. Vincent called me 2 days before the event. I heard you're going to your brother's gala. I am. Why? Because it's time. Time for what? I didn't answer. Wes, be careful. This isn't just about your brother anymore. You've built something real. Don't risk it for revenge. I'm not risking anything. Then what are you doing? I thought about it. I'm finishing what I started. The gala was held in a downtown ballroom that could have been ripped straight out of a magazine. Crystal chandeliers, marble floors, tables draped in white linen. There were maybe 200 people there, executives, investors, city officials, press. Everyone dressed like they were attending a wedding for people they didn't particularly like but needed to impress. I arrived exactly on time, wearing a suit I'd bought specifically for the occasion. It fit perfectly. The first person I saw was my mother. She was standing near the entrance, talking to a couple I didn't recognize. When she saw me, her face brightened. Wes, you came. I did. She walked over, smiling in a way that looked almost genuine. You look wonderful. This is my son, Wes. He runs a very successful recycling company. The couple nodded politely. We shook hands. Then my mother pulled me aside. Your brother will be so happy you're here. I nodded and moved into the room. I found him near the stage, surrounded by executives. He was laughing, gesturing with his hands, holding court the way he always did. He saw me, and his expression shifted. Just for a second. Then the smile came back. Wes, you made it. I did. He walked over. I'm glad you're here. Really. Thanks for the invite. Listen, I know things have been weird between us, but I'm hoping tonight we can move past that. He glanced around. After the program, we should talk? Sure. He clapped me on the shoulder and went back to his group. I found a seat near the middle of the room and waited. The program started 20 minutes later. My brother took the stage, welcomed everyone, and launched into a speech about the importance of collaboration in solving environmental challenges. Tonight, he said, we're celebrating the companies and individuals who are leading the way. People who aren't just talking about change, they're making it happen. He introduced a few partners. Each one got applause. Then he paused. And finally, I want to highlight a company that's doing truly groundbreaking work in waste management, Cascade Resource Systems. The room applauded. Cascade is led by someone very special to me, my brother Wes Farrow. More applause. People turned to look at me. Wes has built something incredible, and I'm proud to say that we're exploring ways to work together, to combine Cascade's innovation with our infrastructure and reach. I felt my jaw tighten. So please, join me in recognizing Wes and the amazing work he's doing. The room clapped. My brother looked at me smiling, waiting for me to stand up and acknowledge the recognition. I stood up. But I didn't stop there. I walked to the stage. My brother's smile faltered. Wes, you don't have to. I took the microphone from his hand. The room went quiet. Thank you, I said, looking out at the audience. I appreciate the recognition, but I need to clarify something. I could feel my brother tense beside me. Cascade Resource Systems is not exploring a partnership with this company. We're not affiliated in any way, and we have no plans to be. A ripple of murmurs went through the room. Cascade is an independent company. We work directly with municipalities to provide waste management solutions. We don't need intermediaries. We don't need corporate sponsors. And we don't need to be featured at events like this to prove our value. My brother stepped closer. Wes, maybe we should... I held up a hand. I'm not finished. He stopped. I looked back at the audience. 3 years ago, I was told I'd never amount to anything, that I was wasting my time, that I didn't have what it took to build something real. My mother was staring at me from her table. So was my father. I was introduced at a family event as a cautionary tale, a joke, someone to laugh at. The room was completely silent now. But here's the thing about being underestimated. It gives you clarity. It shows you exactly who believes in you and who doesn't. And it teaches you that the only validation that matters is the kind you earn yourself. I set the microphone down on the podium. Cascade doesn't need this partnership, but I wanted to be here tonight to make sure everyone understands that. I turned and walked off the stage. The room stayed silent. I didn't look back. I just walked through the ballroom, past the tables, past the executives, past my parents. I pushed through the doors and stepped out into the cool night air. I pulled out my phone and texted Vincent. It's done. I walked to my car, got in, and drove away.